After my identical twin sister's tragic accident, my mother tried to turn me into her, starving and drugging me daily. When I uncovered hidden evidence about what really happened that day, I orchestrated their complete downfall in front of the entire family. The greatest gift my parents ever gave me was my twin sister, Claire. Whenever Mom's cruel comments made me spiral, Claire would sneak into my room with stolen cookie dough and we'd eat it raw. She was the only one who ever truly understood me. One day, during our annual hiking trip in matching Gymshark sets, I slipped near the edge of a cliff. My mom froze, but Claire didn't. She lunged forward to grab me, pushing me back onto solid ground. The momentum carried her over. 6 days later, I stood at her open casket service, hearing my aunt whisper to her daughter, "Such a shame. She was so beautiful," while staring directly at me. My parents waited 2 weeks before bringing her back from the dead. You see, Claire was always their favorite, the smarter one, the thinner one, the one they paraded around like a trophy. And now they needed a replacement. I was fast asleep at 5 a.m. when my mom barged into my room. "Time for your run," she chirped, pulling Claire's pink Nike shoes from a box. "These will fit better once you've made progress." They were 2 sizes too small. She had already set out Claire's breakfast on the kitchen counter: 1 egg white, 6 blueberries, and black coffee. The same meal Claire ate for her modeling shoots. When I reached for a second cup of coffee, Mom called me Claire under her breath, then caught herself. We both pretended it didn't happen. By October, our bathroom had become a shrine to my transformation. Mom installed a digital scale connected to her phone, sending her daily alerts about my weight. My size medium clothes were replaced with Claire's extra smalls, hung in my closet with notes like December goal and spring target. Dad just watched from the doorway, mumbling things like, "Your mother needs this to heal." I downloaded Claire's workout apps, pretended her Lululemon sports bras almost fit, anything to make Mom smile the way she used to smile at Claire. The modeling agency didn't question anything when Mom brought me to Claire's shoots. "Just tell her to suck in," they said. Mom started introducing me as Claire to photographers who had never met either of us. One day, my bed disappeared while I was at school, replaced with an elliptical. "Claire's bed has better back support anyway," Mom explained. So I slept surrounded by Claire's things, her scent, her ghost. The only comfort I had left was Mango, our orange tabby cat who curled up on my chest when hunger pains kept me awake. He was the only one who still knew I was Zoe. Mom always hated that cat, said he shed too much, made Claire's allergies flare, but Mango was the only thing still mine. Then came the day I found Mango's empty collar on the kitchen counter. "Oh, since Claire never liked cats, we put her down," she said, not even looking up from her calorie tracking app. She was getting old anyway. When I started sobbing, she calmly told me my breakfast portions would be cut in half for the next week. "You shouldn't have enough energy to argue." That's when I started really paying attention to what I was eating. The protein powder tasted strange. It made me dizzy. I found the container tucked behind Claire's old supplements, laced with appetite suppressants, enough to make anyone sick. When I confronted them at dinner, Dad slapped me for the first time. The sound echoed through the kitchen like a gunshot. The next morning, I went straight to Miss Blake, the guidance counselor. She'd been watching me shrink for months. When I told her everything, her face went pale. "Zoe, Claire came to me before the trip," she said slowly. She was terrified. "Your mom found out she'd been eating lunch with her friends instead of throwing it away. She told me if I called CPS, she'd hurt herself." I reached into my bag and pulled out Claire's iPhone. "I found this in Mom's car weeks ago. I haven't been able to unlock it. I've been carrying it around since she died, hoping it would come in handy." Miss Blake studied my face. "Claire said her password was something about you, something that showed how much she loved you." We tried everything: my name, my birthday, our inside jokes.
Then she suggested my birthday, backwards. It worked. The Voice Memos app was full of recordings from the past year. Miss Blake and I listened together, her hand gripping mine as Claire's voice filled the room. The early recordings were mostly Mom screaming about portion sizes, Dad ranting about wasted investments. But the last recording, dated the night before the hiking trip, was different. "I don't care about being skinny anymore," Claire's voice said, stronger than I had ever heard it. "I'm done with modeling. I just want to be normal like Zoe." Then Mom's voice, cold and sharp. "Maybe it's time you finally learned how fragile life really is." Suddenly, it all made sense. Why Claire had reacted so fast on the hike. She knew what was coming. Miss Blake locked her office door and called her husband on speaker. I clutched Claire's phone as the police chief's voice filled the room, but his response made my stomach drop. He dismissed the recordings as family grief issues, saying they couldn't investigate angry teenage rants. My hands trembled as I held onto the phone, watching Miss Blake's face fall with every word. My phone buzzed, a message from Mom asking where I was and mentioning that my protein shake was getting warm. The realization hit like ice in my veins. She was tracking me through Claire's fitness app, still synced to her phone. I fumbled to delete the apps. Mom called immediately. Her voice was calm but laced with threat. I had 10 minutes to get home, or she'd report me as a runaway, saying I was clearly having a breakdown, just like Claire did. Miss Blake drove me home in silence, promising she'd document everything. But from the window, I saw Mom and Dad watching, their faces set in that perfect, concerned parent expression they'd mastered over the years. As we pulled in, they exchanged a look that made my skin crawl. Inside, Mom wrapped me in a tearful hug, telling me that Miss Blake had called about my delusions, that they'd hurt Claire. She stroked my hair, promising to get me help with the same doctor who treated Claire's paranoia. The way she said it, everything clicked. This had been planned. She sent me upstairs to what used to be Claire's room. My laptop was gone. So was my phone charger. Mom's voice drifted through the door, explaining it was to help me rest. The walls felt like they were closing in as I sat on Claire's bed, surrounded by her things, trapped in her life. At 2 a.m., I crept downstairs and found them in the office, feeding documents into the shredder. Claire's modeling contracts, her medical records, anything with her real signature turned to ribbons. Mom turned when the floorboard creaked. Her expression was disturbingly calm. "It's good you're up. Time for your run." Then she held out her hand. "Give me Claire's phone." She knew I had it all along. I backed away, refusing. She didn't flinch, just pulled out her phone and sent a message. "She's having another episode." Within minutes, headlights swept across the living room windows. Dr. Morrison arrived with his black medical bag, the same psychiatrist who treated Claire's so-called paranoia. Dad appeared behind me, blocking the door. I screamed, "They killed Claire!" as Dad grabbed my arms, but Dr. Morrison calmly prepped a syringe like he'd done it 100 times. In a burst of panic, I managed to type a message to my cousin, Sarah, "Check Claire's phone," and hit send just as Mom's fist slammed into my bedroom door, splintering the wood. The sedative burned through my bloodstream. Dr. Morrison's voice faded in and out, explaining how I shared Claire's delusions, that I needed intensive treatment. I woke slowly, my mouth dry, my head pounding. Sarah was sitting beside my bed. She said Mom had called the whole family, told them I was having a breakdown, that she'd been brought in to help care for me. Her eyes were confused, but also full of concern. I reached for my phone with shaking hands and saw the truth. Mom had changed the Wi-Fi password overnight. The message to Sarah was still unsent. Digital isolation complete. Mom brought breakfast on a tray, half an egg white and a glass of water. She explained Dr. Morrison believed my paranoia stemmed from malnutrition, so they needed to be even more careful with my diet. The irony wasn't lost on me as I stared at the pitiful meal, remembering Claire's voice in those recordings, remembering how she was starved. Then my boss called about my shift, and Mom intercepted, explaining my psychological crisis and the need for an extended treatment leave. I listened helplessly as she severed another lifeline to the outside world, her voice dripping with false concern. Every word carefully crafted to paint me as unstable, unreliable, a danger to myself. Aunt Meredith arrived that afternoon, the same woman who'd whispered that awful comment at Claire's funeral. Now she exuded fake sympathy, patting Mom's hand as she asked whether I really believed Claire had been murdered. The performance was seamless, a concerned family rallying around a troubled teen and her grieving mother, all staged during what Mom called family therapy in the living room. While everyone focused on Mom's tearful theatrics, I managed to slip Claire's phone into my pocket. I excused myself to the bathroom, but instead I climbed out the window. My body was weak, but adrenaline carried me forward. Mrs. Chen lived just 3 houses down, yet the journey felt endless. Her face turned pale when I played one of Claire's recordings. She admitted she'd heard screaming that night, but Mom had told her it was just Claire having nightmares. Before we could talk further, Mom appeared at the front door, explaining I was unwell and having delusions about my sister. I watched Mrs. Chen's certainty falter under Mom's practiced charm. Doubt crept into her eyes like a fog. Back home, the patterns became clearer and more chilling. Mom timed my bathroom breaks. She counted my steps using a baby monitor app she'd secretly installed. She even checked my pulse while tucking me in at night. Every moment monitored, every breath measured. The house had become a maximum security prison dressed up as a loving home. Sarah began leaving my bedroom door unlocked at night. Small rebellions. She'd overheard Mom talking to Dad about launching the Claire Foundation as soon as I was fully committed, using Claire's name and image to build Mom's legacy while erasing who she truly was. The thought made me physically ill. One evening, I found Sarah crying in Claire's closet, holding an old photo in trembling hands. She confessed that Claire had told her during Christmas that Mom had hit her, but she hadn't believed it at the time. The guilt in her eyes matched mine. We had both failed to save her. But now Sarah was determined not to fail me, too. Mom caught us together later that night. She immediately sent Sarah home, declaring that my delusions were contagious and she wouldn't allow me to poison more family members. The isolation tightened like a noose. That night I heard Mom on the phone with Dr. Morrison describing how I had infected my cousin and asking how soon they could schedule my full evaluation. The next morning brought a terrifying new routine. Mom set up her phone on a tripod in the living room, adjusted the lighting, sat me, drugged and sluggish, on the couch. She smoothed my hair, pinched my cheeks for color, then hit record. Her fingers moved fast as she went live on Claire's old Instagram account, broadcasting to 50,000 followers who still believed they were following my dead sister. I watched through heavy eyelids as she narrated my morning workout routine, calling me Claire the entire time. She positioned me on a yoga mat, arranging my limbs like a doll, explaining to the camera how grief inspired Claire's fitness transformation. Comments flooded in, heart emojis, praise, cheers for Claire's strength. It was genius. Evil, but genius. Mom was crafting a digital trail to prove I'd chosen this identity, that I had willingly stepped into Claire's life. The pattern became obvious over the next few days. These daily live streams were laying the groundwork. If I ever spoke out, no one would believe me. Not after thousands had seen me, smiling, becoming Claire in real time. The drugs dulled my will, but the realization kept me fighting. I knew the trap was nearly complete. 3 days into the new routine, Mom positioned me again for another live stream. While she adjusted the camera, I reached toward the coffee table and grabbed a notebook. With trembling hands, I scrawled in large, shaky letters, "This is Zoe, not Claire." When she turned back to the camera to greet her audience, I held the sign behind her. Most people missed it, but one didn't. Jess, one of Claire's closest friends from the modeling world, took a screenshot before Mom noticed my reflection in the glass of a nearby frame. Mom's face remained calm for the camera, but her body shifted subtly to block me. Her grip on my wrist tightened, leaving bruises.
She ended the stream abruptly, citing technical issues. Less than an hour later, Jess showed up at our door holding a bouquet of flowers.
and handed over a grief counselor's business card. Mom's smile was tight as she invited her in, offering tea almost immediately. Jess politely declined, claiming she was fasting for an upcoming shoot. She'd seen my warning. She knew better than to drink anything Mom offered. While Mom prepped lunch in the kitchen, Jess sat close beside me on the couch. She pulled out her phone, pretending to scroll through old photos of Claire, when in fact she was recording. I whispered everything in a rush, the forced dieting, the substances, the recordings hidden on Claire's phone. Jess kept her face neutral, laughing softly at invented memories to keep up appearances. After she left, Jess tried calling the police from her car, but the operator said they needed evidence of immediate danger to conduct a welfare check and recommended contacting Child Protective Services instead. The same system that had failed Claire was failing me now, too. But Jess didn't stop. She began coordinating secretly with Sarah through Snapchat, using disappearing messages to build a quiet network. They reached out to Claire's old friends, teachers who'd noticed her sudden weight loss, anyone who might have seen the cracks in Mom's perfect act. An underground resistance formed just beneath Mom's radar. I stumbled across Mom's true intentions while searching her bathroom for painkillers. Behind Claire's old supplements, I found a box of syringes with the labels scraped off. The residue on them suggested Rohypnol, or something just as dangerous. My hands shook as I photographed everything with Claire's phone, adding it to the archive of truth I was building. The next day, Mrs. Chen called the house, asking to speak to me about borrowing sugar. Mom lingered nearby, but I took the call anyway. In carefully chosen words, Mrs. Chen mentioned how early the birds had been singing on the morning Claire died, specifically at 5:47 a.m. But Mom had told everyone she and Claire had left the house at 8 a.m. for their special breakfast. The timeline didn't match. That afternoon, Dr. Morrison scheduled my psychiatric evaluation for the following day. Mom packed a suitcase using Claire's clothes, telling me I'd feel more comfortable in familiar things. She folded each item with unnerving tenderness, like she was preparing for a vacation, not my imprisonment. Dad stood in the doorway, watching silently. That evening, my phone buzzed with a photo from Sarah. She and Jess were parked down the street waiting to help me escape if I could reach the bathroom window. Hope lit like a spark in my chest. I waited until I heard the shower running, Mom's nightly ritual, then crept toward the stairs. But she was already waiting in the dark at the bottom, her silhouette barely visible. Her hands were trembling. "Where are you going?" she asked, voice brittle. But I saw it, for the first time. Fear. Real fear. Her perfect control was slipping. She offered me money to leave quietly, to avoid destroying our family's reputation. I told her it was already destroyed, the moment she took Claire's life. The lights flicked on. Dad stepped out from the kitchen alongside Dr. Morrison and 2 orderlies. The evaluation had been moved up, no warning. I screamed, loud enough for the whole neighborhood to hear. "They killed Claire! They're trying to erase me, too!" Lights turned on in surrounding houses. Curtains rustled. Faces peeked out from behind glass. The orderlies hesitated, visibly uncertain. One of them asked Dr. Morrison, "Are you sure this is necessary?" Mom tried to seize the narrative, calling me delusional, just like Claire had been before her accident. But her voice cracked on the last word. The mask slipped. Dr. Morrison backed away slightly. "I can't perform an evaluation while she's in this state. She needs to be calm," buying us precious time. Dad muttered something about waiting until morning, but Mom turned on him, vicious. "You agreed to this. You said she needed help." Their once united front crumbled as the neighbors looked on. Outside, Sarah captured it all. Jess was filming too, recording Mom's spiraling, her frantic attempts to force order back into the scene. Mom's desperation escalated with every second. Years of careful control unraveled in front of an audience she couldn't manipulate. I stood tall in the center of the chaos, refusing to be moved.
I am Zoe, I said, my voice unwavering. Claire died trying to save me from becoming Mom's next victim.
See them. How she always looked tired, hollow, smaller. Mom lunged at me in frustration, but tripped over Claire's 2 small sneakers I was still wearing. She sprawled across the floor, and her wig slid off, revealing thin, patchy hair from stress. The physical mask slipped, just like the emotional one. Dad stared at her as though seeing her clearly for the very first time. Sarah acted fast, playing Mrs. Chen's voicemail on speaker. Her voice filled the room, calmly stating she had security footage of Mom's car leaving the house at 5:47 a.m., not 8 a.m., as Mom had always claimed. Dad's face went pale as the timeline unraveled. His voice trembled when he asked Mom directly, "Why did you lie?" And Mom broke. She screamed at him about how Claire had been about to ruin everything, the contracts, the endorsements, the reputation. She pointed at me with trembling hands, snarling that I was just like her, ungrateful, disobedient, a disappointment. The motive came spilling out, her rage exposing everything she had kept buried. Jess, ever quick, forwarded the audio to everyone in Claire's modeling circle. Within minutes, my phone and hers began to light up with messages. Photographers, agents, other models. Shocked, furious, supportive. The carefully curated illusion Mom had spent years building collapsed in seconds. Mom tried one last desperate trick. She claimed I had pushed Claire out of jealousy, that everything she'd done since was to protect me. But I held up Claire's phone and played her final recording, the one where she said she just wanted to be normal like me. The love in her voice, the longing, the peace, it silenced the room. Even the orderlies looked shaken. Sarah called her mother, Mom's sister, Aunt Meredith, and played the recording where Mom threatened Claire's life. Meredith gasped aloud, her voice cracking through the phone as the truth hit her. Why Claire had distanced herself, why she'd stopped coming to gatherings. Dr. Morrison tried to make a quiet exit, but I stepped in front of him, blocking the doorway. I asked, "How many other girls have you sedated for their mothers? How many daughters did you silence because they were inconvenient?" His face went pale under the weight of the stares around him. Finally, cornered and trembling, he admitted to sedating Claire multiple times. He said Mom had told him we suffered from a genetic delusion disorder. And then, like a coward, he mumbled that he was calling his lawyer. More family members arrived, alerted by Meredith's calls. I directed younger cousins to stay in their cars, shielding them, offering more protection in one moment than Mom ever had for any of us. It was clear to everyone where the moral high ground stood. Claire's agent pushed through the crowd, waving papers. She revealed that Mom had forged Claire's signature on the last 3 modeling contracts after Claire refused to renew. The fraud was documented, another crime. The agent admitted she had suspected something was off, but she hadn't acted. Another adult who failed us. Then Mom, desperate to regain control, looked me dead in the eye and called me Claire again. But I stood tall. I said, "My name is Zoe. Claire is gone. I survived, and you're going to pay for that." That clarity, the refusal to be erased, was everything. I would not let her replace my sister with a puppet version. Not again. Dad finally cracked. It happened the moment Mom, in her fury, accidentally used my real name while threatening me. She tried to cover it up, but it was too late. He saw it then, how easily she switched us, how little we meant as individuals. His face folded in on itself, crushed by the weight of his complicity. People started talking. Family members began sharing the stories they'd kept quiet about. Texts came in from Claire's old classmates about bruises, skipped meals, panicked whispers. The silence that had protected Mom all these years shattered like glass. Then I remembered Claire's diary. I'd hidden it weeks ago, after finding it tucked in a corner of the attic. I raced upstairs and pulled it from under her old mattress. The pages held it all: dates, descriptions, patterns of escalating abuse. Proof. Undeniable. Tomorrow would have been Claire's birthday. and I realized, with sickening clarity, that Mom had been planning to unveil the Claire Foundation, with me as the face, her final erasure, her final performance. That deadline gave me a new purpose: stop her before she rewrote Claire completely. More relatives arrived as the story spread, and Mom, so composed, so convincing for so long, crumbled in front of them all. Everything she built was ashes now.
In the doorway, not saying a word at first, he just looked at me, really looked at me, for what felt like the first time in years. There was something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Guilt, yes, but also recognition of me, of what he had allowed to happen, of what he'd ignored until it was too late. The pattern had become undeniable to everyone. Now, faced with a choice between utterly destroying Nam or choosing something greater, I chose truth over revenge. Claire would have wanted justice, not a spectacle, not a scorched earth. So I calmly told the officers that we had recordings, video evidence, and witnesses proving Claire's death wasn't an accident. Mom's charity board associates received recordings forwarded from several sources. Their responses were swift and cold. They couldn't be affiliated with a scandal this severe. Years of social climbing vanished in hours. The empire Mom built on Claire's suffering collapsed in hours. Through consistent, relentless truth-telling, I dismantled a fortress of lies in one night. Neighbors who had once believed Mom's stories about troubled daughters saw what really happened. Family who once dismissed Claire's weight loss as modeling pressure finally recognized it as abuse. Friends who had nodded along to Mom's excuses now had to confront their silence. Mom made one final grasp at control, screaming that I was sick, delusional, that this was just another breakdown. But no one listened. The crowd that had once admired her saw behind the curtain now. Her voice, once sharp and commanding, fell flat under the weight of mounting evidence. Dad finally spoke, his voice low but steady. He said, "It's over. Claire is gone because of us, because of you, and I won't let you take Zoe too." His words came too late to save Claire, but they ended Mom's reign. 2 local officers showed up, familiar with our address. Their tone suggested this wasn't their first call from our house. One asked if I was having another episode. Jess was still recording. Miss Blake and her husband, the police chief, arrived next. As a mandated reporter who had personally heard Claire's recordings, she demanded a full investigation, warning she'd go to the state if they failed to act. Her presence changed everything. I handed over Claire's phone, now full of dated recordings. Each one detailed escalating abuse. This time the evidence wasn't ignored. It was logged, backed by witnesses, and protected. Chief Blake reviewed Mrs. Chan's security footage on his laptop, his expression grim as the timestamp showed Mom's car leaving at 5:47 a.m., not the 8 a.m. story she had repeated for months. He asked her directly about the 5.5-hour gap before she called 911. Mom mumbled something about driving around to cool off after an argument, but it unraveled quickly. She couldn't explain the clothes she'd changed into, the disabled GPS, the texts. Sarah held up her phone and showed screenshots of a family text from Mom that morning, sent at 8 a.m., claiming she was just taking Claire to breakfast. It was already a lie when she sent it. A perfect digital timeline, impossible to deny. I brought out the box of syringes from the bathroom, the appetite suppressants, the forged contracts. Physical evidence piled up on the coffee table, like weight pressing down on Mom's facade. Paramedics examined me, documenting clear signs of malnutrition, dehydration, and sedatives in my system. Their report would become undeniable medical proof. This wasn't drama, it was harm. Mom's last-ditch effort was to claim that I had been obsessed with becoming Claire, that I'd created this fantasy out of guilt. But no one followed her anymore. Dad didn't back her up. His silence was deafening. The man who had always stood by her now stood apart. The enabler finally stopped enabling. Sarah showed the officers months' worth of messages between us, time-stamped, consistent, real. They proved this wasn't some sudden collapse. It was a slow, visible descent into a trap I had tried to escape again and again. Each message was another nail in the coffin of Mom's deception. Families started to leave. Some offered hugs, gentle words, awkward apologies. Others muttered about shame and disgrace, slipping out without making eye contact. The split was expected. Not everyone wants to believe truth when it shatters something beautiful on the outside. But I stayed. The decision to remain in the house that night wasn't about comfort. It was about reclaiming what had been taken. This had been Claire's home, too. I refused to let Mom erase both of us. I sat in her old room, my room now, surrounded by boxes of evidence and truth. The same room they tried to erase me in became the place I reclaimed myself. At 3 a.m., Dad appeared in the doorway. He sat down beside me without asking, and for the first time since Claire's death, neither of us said a word. We didn't need to.
As Dad stood in my doorway, his face gaunt with guilt, he apologized, quietly, sincerely, for not protecting us, for not seeing it sooner. Then he picked up his car keys. I watched from the window as he drove himself to the police station, ready to confess his part in the abuse and cover-up. Dawn brought new movement. Mom sat in custody while Dad gave his full statement. I stayed in Claire's room with Sarah and Jess, sorting through the mountain of evidence, preparing for whatever legal path came next. The air in the house had changed. Without Mom's oppressive presence, even the walls seemed to breathe easier. Mom's attorney showed up at the house later, attempting to spin a defense rooted in grief-induced psychosis. But I played the recording Mom threatening Claire weeks before she died. The intent was clear. It wasn't a breakdown. It was calculated. The lawyer's confidence faded as he realized just how damning the evidence was. Dad's confession sealed the final gap. Claire had uncovered that Mom had been drugging her since she was 12, all to keep her weight down for modeling. She had planned to go to the police the morning of the hike. The motive was no longer speculative. It was fact, written into a sworn confession. Miss Blake came back, not as a school counselor this time, but as an advocate. She admitted she had failed Claire once and vowed not to make the same mistake with me. Her determination would become crucial in navigating a system that had overlooked us for too long. I was given the choice: accept a plea deal or push for full charges. It wasn't easy, but I chose the path Claire never got the chance to walk. Truth in open court. She deserved that much. From jail, Mom attempted one last emotional play. Letters filled with guilt and veiled threats. "You'll be completely alone if you do this," she warned. But she was too late. I had already survived what mattered most: losing Claire. Nothing she said could break me now. The community's support stunned me. Claire's real friends reached out with offers of safe places to stay, part-time jobs, warm words. Many told me how Claire used to talk about me, how proud she was, how fiercely she loved me. A chosen family began to form around me, brick by brick. Mom kept sending letters from jail, signing them as Claire. Sarah stood beside me each time I burned them, unread. The ritual became an act of reclamation, a refusal to let Mom weaponize my sister's memory. When Claire's medical records came to light, full of years of unexplained illnesses matching symptoms of poisoning, Mom's legal team abandoned the case. There was nothing left to defend, especially with Dad's testimony about her drugging regimen. Justice would come without a high-priced defense. I visited Dad in jail once, not for reconciliation, just closure. I told him I forgave his weakness, but I would never forget that Claire died because he chose silence. He had no words, just tears. And that was enough. News of Mom's breakdown and custody eventually leaked. She admitted to her lawyer that she hadn't meant to kill Claire. She only wanted her to be perfect. That twisted logic would likely work against her in trial, showing the disturbing lengths she was willing to go to control her daughters' lives. Cleaning out the house became its own kind of therapy. We boxed up Claire's real clothes, the ones she loved, not the ones Mom forced her to wear, and donated them to local girls who needed them. Every bag felt like a small way to honor who she really was. On what would have been Claire's birthday, instead of the foundation launch Mom had planned, I held a small memorial, just the people who actually knew her. We shared real stories, her bad puns, the way she used to sneak candy into her pillowcase, how she'd stand in front of mirrors practicing a perfect smile when she thought no one was watching. The tribute was messy, heartfelt, and true. Everything Mom's manufactured legacy could never be. While packing the last of Claire's belongings, I found one final recording on her phone, dated the morning she died. Her voice was steady, clear. She said she loved me, that I was always perfect, exactly the way I was. The message gave me the one thing I hadn't dared hope for: peace. Miss Blake's family offered me a place to stay while I finished school. It was a warm, ordinary home filled with quiet dinners and real conversations. At first, their calm felt like a foreign language.
But gradually, it started to feel like home. They saw me as Zoe, not as Claire's replacement and not as a fragile girl to be pitied. Just me. Mom was sentenced to 25 years to life for Claire's death, while Dad received 10 years for accessory after the fact and child endangerment. The severity of the sentences reflected the truth of what they had done: the premeditation, the manipulation, the long-standing abuse. Justice for Claire came not through vengeance, but through the very system Mom had once believed she could control. In the months that followed, I began speaking at schools, quiet assemblies and workshops focused on recognizing abuse, unhealthy control, coercion disguised as love. I wore clothes that actually fit me. I ate full meals without shame. The talks weren't for fame or pity, they were for kids like Claire, kids like me. Each presentation was a way of honoring her, a way to ensure that maybe somewhere another sister wouldn't be lost. Surrounded by the chosen family who knew me as Zoe, I finally allowed myself to grieve, really grieve. It was raw, it was slow, it was painful, but it was mine. Mom had stolen our chance to say goodbye, but she couldn't erase the love Claire and I had shared, not even with all her lies. 6 months after the night the truth came out, I was living a life Claire would have wanted for me, a life that was real, that was mine, free from Mom's suffocating grip, authentic, healthy, whole. Her final gift wasn't a foundation or a public image, it was a message left just for me.